the Democrats lost for two reasons. First, Trump ran an iconic campaign. And second, the Democrats ran an exceptionally bad campaign. I have this tweet here from my friend who runs the leftism account. He says, love him or hate him, you have to admit Trump has run the most iconic presidential campaign ever, and it's going to go down in all the history books. Now, don't know if it's the most iconic ever, could be, but it's definitely up there. It's incredibly iconic. We had incredible moments that even people who wouldn't be voting for Trump, they have to admit that it was.
The fist-pumping assassination moment, that transcends electioneering even, as an iconic image. Yes. I think that really will go down in history.
It has also become a cup, and the Lotus Eaters merch. People can visit our merch and see that we choose to still sell some of them for a limited amount of time. We have cups, mugs, t-shirts. Definitely check them. Right, so it was an iconic campaign. And I think that this is a campaign that would win even against a good Democrat campaign. But the Democrat campaign was incredibly bad. And I think that essentially it had three really bad aspects into it. It had an incredibly bad choice of candidates, an incredibly unclear message, and also a very bad delivery and performance. So everything was wrong with it. You don't even know where to begin. Right, so I think we should bear in mind the results, because this is one thing to use to judge how the Democrat campaign took place. So Trump has literally won more than the seats he needs, and the Democrats have close to 226 seats. It's definitely, it's a huge loss. It wasn't the kind of...
That's a massive drop-off in total votes from 2020, by the way, for the Democrats.
Exactly.
I wonder why that would happen.
So this wasn't the kind of Republican victory that you saw, for instance, in 1984 elections with Reagan and Mondale, but still it's a very big victory. So the message didn't work. The message just didn't work. They got close to 68 million votes. Trump won around 5 million votes more. So something didn't work. Something didn't quite work. And a lot of Democrats and progressives across the world, they don't know exactly what.
Well, one thing I'll quickly say, if it's all right, is, of course, there's the campaign season, and the campaign, of course, matters. Yeah. But there's the years before that as well. I don't know I think right at the beginning of the campaigning season, I saw some data saying that there weren't that many undecideds. People sort of already made up their mind one way or another, whether it was about the Afghanistan debacle or the fact they're just simply poorer, or the world seems much less safe, or whatever it is. A lot of people will have made up their minds before Trump and Kamala even hit the campaign trail.
I think that's definitely true. A very large majority functions that way. That's why swing states are incredibly important, and that's why the campaigns are addressing those undecided voters. And you could say that people who make up these undecided voters have a more of a negotiational power when it comes to politics. That's why a lot of minorities, for instance, sometimes have a disproportionate amount of power, because parties are trying to appease them and meet their demands in exchange for their votes. Right, so let's see here a demographic breakdown of the votes. So we see white men voted only 24% for Harris. You could say a bit less than a quarter voted for Harris, and quarters voted for Trump. 31% of white women voted for Kamala Harris. Close to 70% of white women voted for Donald Trump. Now, when it comes to black men, they voted for 81% for Harris and close to 16%. In other polls, it's a bit less for Trump, and black women, 90%
that's still a lot of black men for Trump, to be fair.
Yeah, that was the point I was making in the previous segment.
That's actually,
it's still surprising that it's that many. That 8% of black women voted Trump. Nearly 1 in 10. That's surprising. That's
90% of black women voted for Harris, which is, you could see the biggest number there, the biggest percentage. It's as if Harris was targeting specifically black women. And 8% they voted for Trump. Latino men voted 45% for Trump. That wasn't exactly to be expected.
That was something I saw a lot of leftists complaining about online, as though Latino men, Hispanic men, had betrayed the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
But there
Also-
were parts of Florida, for instance, where the entire Latino population voted for Trump.
Also, 40% of Latino women, Latinas, voted for Trump, which again you wouldn't expect. And with other races, 55% voted for Trump. Again, that wasn't that much expected, at least to some. So it seems like the way the people received the message was that the message of the Democrat, the policies of the Democrat were overwhelmingly targeted to address black men and women. That's essentially what their message was seen to be like.
It was
that
a minoritarian campaign.
Exactly. So you don't go to fight national elections. When you want to win the majority vote, when you make all the elections about minorities.
When you say it like that, it's just it's the most
Of
obvious
course,
thing to
yeah.
say. They're mad. They must have been mad.
Exactly.
Their grand strategy was a madness.
Yeah. So I think we need to focus a lot on the people that were involved. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, the celebrities that were involved, the weird white dude for Harris thing, and also the message and also their reaction. Because one thing you can guarantee that politicians don't lie about is that we live in a time of crisis. You can count that this is true. So every time is a time of crisis. And these elections were presented as a time of unprecedented crisis, essentially. Both sides were saying that something really important is on the ballot, that the stakes are really high.
We've said that before, though, haven't we? That's almost it's sort of hard baked into republics that you have to make, or democracies, that you have to make each big vote mean a be all and end all thing, whether it really is or not. That's sort of part and parcel of it.
Yeah.
If you were to look at it from a meta perspective and take them at their word that literally every single election is a massive crisis, then that's quite a condemnation of democracy.
I don't think
that you're in a constant state of crisis.
I don't think it is, because it's an occasion for judgment. And
Well, no,
whether you're in a
I'm
democracy or you're in a council with a few, again, it's going to be a moment of crisis. So ultimately,
both right.
all it comes down to is people making good decisions. The number is up for debate, but essentially we're talking about good decision making. So I think what happens here was that, let's take a look at Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, because they were the candidates essentially. They're exceptionally bad picks. So what does Kamala Harris have? What did she have on her CV? It looks as if she failed upwards her whole career. She didn't have one. So what I wanted to say before is that when you say to the people that this is a time of unprecedented crisis, they are judging you. What do you suggest for us to do about the crisis? So when Tim Walz comes across and says, yeah, we do live in a time of unprecedented crisis, democracy is on the ballot, therefore we want tampons in boys' classrooms, in bathrooms, yeah, it's going to come across as non-serious and as insincere.
Do you remember why it was that Waltz was picked?
Please.
Because I'm almost certain he was picked solely because he was the guy who came up with the Trump and Vance are weird meme.
Maybe,
he started calling them weird.
Wasn't he also the governor of Minnesota when the BLM riots were taking place?
Yes.
He's obviously just a complete cuck, isn't he? But I mean, I remember it must have been the 2004 presidential election when Bush Jr. getting re-elected, and they were right in the middle of Iraq. They're right in the middle of like one of the battles at Fallujah or something, and that did seem like things were really on the line. They were really in the middle of something. And obviously I wasn't alive, but from what I've read and what I know, the 68 election, sort of Vietnam was in full swing, and when they picked Nixon, or even the 72 election, re-electing Nixon in 1972, again, a time of actual, or much closer to crisis than what we experience today.
Threat of nuclear warfare, for instance.
Right, there's Cold War still going on and stuff.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So when it comes to Kamala Harris, she had a very confused message. To this day, I still don't know exactly what her message was, but it seems to me that she sort of tried to portray herself as different from Biden, but I couldn't see how.
Despite being his vice president.
Despite being his vice president, she tried to portray herself as different from Biden, but I don't see exactly how, except if we focus on characteristics that woke people would want us to focus on. Like, she is the first candidate with X or Y irrelevant characteristic. That's all what they had to propose in a time of unprecedented crisis. So she was the border czar, and when a lot of people were genuinely concerned about the situation at the southern border and the rise in crime in several cases, in several cities, her response was to essentially say, no, I'm not Donald Trump, and everyone who's worried is a disgusting bigot. That's how her message came across. I'm sure some Democrats will deny this, but this is how her message came across. So that's not serious. When you say that you face an unprecedented crisis, you don't just have people like Tim Walz saying, yeah, we need to solve the crisis by putting tampons in boys' bathrooms. You don't have I mean, this was a big moment in the. He seemed as completely as a fish out of the bowl. We have this. This will become a meme. It has already become a meme. We have J.D. Vance in his debate with Tim Walz. He had this expression that suggested, "I don't know what I'm hearing," and you're supposed to know when you want to be the vice president. You're supposed to know. He wasn't also in favor of free speech, and also Kamala Harris. They were particularly adverse to free speech. And when you're saying that you're facing again a time of unprecedented crisis, you need to show that you understand that people from the other side will be concerned and want to express their concerns. Rather, what they did was, well, we're going to make everyone shut up by calling them disgusting bigots. Clearly, it didn't work. It didn't work. And also, what was his message to men? And again, I still don't know what their message to men, to the male population was. He says, I want to talk to all the guys for a second. Think about all the women in your life that you love, daughters, wives, moms, cousins, neighbors. This election is about their lives and protecting their freedoms. Well, it's about everyone's freedoms, presumably. Well, you try to talk about the common good, not just about the common good of particular special interest groups. And it seems like not all women voted for Harris, let's say.
Well, it is right to say though that Walz's message to men was be a cuckold.
Yeah.
His whole point was step aside and let women take charge. So stop being men, sit in the cook chair in the corner, and watch Kamala, girl boss it.
Also, one thing is that when we're talking about the choice of president of the U.S., a lot of people choose the person they feel comfortable with making decisions. So when you have it contextualized in your mind that something really important is at stake, we need to safeguard our, let's say, our country. You want people who don't appease those who burn your flags.
Yeah.
For instance.
Right.
Yeah. It seems like both Kamala Harris and the Biden administration didn't have the reaction that a lot of people would have want them to have when people like that burned American flags constantly. Yeah, this is disastrous optically. But they did have this visceral reaction when some people left skid marks and pride murals. They constantly said hate crime. The whole establishment that backed the Biden administration, they protested hate crime where there were skid marks and pride murals, but they weren't particularly alarmed at people desecrating statues and monuments of the U.S. In the grand scheme of things, outside the woke bubble, when people do this, it doesn't reflect well on them. Right, so let's talk about the celebrities, because that was fun. I think essentially what their main takeaway from this is that they need better teleprompters. I don't know if you saw.
I saw
Cardi
this,
B. She literally took the podium, and for 1 minute and 25 seconds, she had nothing to say. She was incredibly nervous, and someone brought her a phone.
Even if she had something to say, if you are voting on behalf of what Cardi B has told you, if that's why you're voting and who you're voting for, you shouldn't be allowed to vote.
Yeah, it's a funny thing when people actually take their political cues from any sort of celebrity.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle had a funny bit about Ja Rule. Do you remember that? It's years old now.
Yeah.
He's saying, "Oh, let's get Ja." I think he was talking about 9/11. It's like we need to understand what Ja Rule thinks about this. What's Ja Rule's take? Yeah, if you're taking your politics off of Cardi B or Beyonce or The Rock, it's the same for the right on the right hand side. If you were an undecided, but you saw that Hulk Hogan and the Undertaker were pro-Trump, you're like, well, I'm pro-Trump now. Yeah, you've lost.
That's not serious.
Yeah.
But
It's not good on both sides of the aisle.
But at the very least, the aesthetics of Donald Trump being endorsed by Hulk Hogan are better than Kamala Harris with Cardi B twerking for her.
But also, we have J-Lo here, Jennifer Lopez, who endorsed Kamala Harris. And what is interesting, I saw someone saying, I think it was Gad Saad, that she has a notoriously bad reputation for treating people who work with her and for her really badly.
Yeah.
So all these celebrities living in their really rich houses, isolated from the actual problems of most people, they're talking down to everyone. It's not gonna work. It doesn't reflect well on.
She was with P. Diddy for years. You know that?
Oh, it said in that tweet that was.
Oh, was it? Oh, did it?
A moment ago, between 99
Someone's
and
there.
2001.
Someone's there holding champagne, I think.
I think that's Diddy.
Yeah.
Or was it actually him? Okay.
We also had the Avengers. Suddenly, the Avengers cast. Let's say Scarlett Johansson. I'm sorry she did this.
Why are you apologizing on her behalf? Do you personally know her? Did you convince her to do this?
No, I didn't. Robert Downey Jr.
You tried to talk her out of it.
She shouldn't have done so.
Scarlett, no, don't do it, says Stelly.
We had also this weird thing here, the white dudes for Harris, and also the incredibly cringe answer by Robert
That's not
Downey Jr.
cringe. That's base, damn it. Return to Spartan morality.
He said, "You're not men, you're boys. If there was no social media, you'd be my concubines." And we have here Harry Sisson and Din Withers awaiting Robert O'Neill's winning bid at the White Dudes for Harris auction.
Nobody else put a bid in. They all knew that they already belonged to O'Neill.
Right. So I want to talk a bit about their message, because their message was essentially, we're not Trump. Their message was, Trump is Hitler. Anyone who is pro-Trump is a disgusting bigot. Any kind of concerns that they express, they're the concerns of disgusting bigots. If you dare to even say that there is a problem with erosion of the culture of the nation, you're a bigot. Essentially, they were talking down to people. And I think that this shows a lot about the elites that form what we speak of as the progressive establishment, within quotation marks, because I think actually it's incredibly regressive. It's just it's not actual progress. And
I think the best way to characterize it is they are the conservatives of yesterday's regime, right? Yesterday's hegemony.
And they have violated Scarface's law. He says on Scarface in the movie, "Don't get high with your own supply." Essentially, that's exactly what happened. And that's what makes them authoritarian, essentially, because one of the problems of authoritarian regimes is the circulation of information. No one wants to bring bad news to the leader. So that's exactly how the establishment that backed Kamala Harris functions. They didn't want to circulate bad news to each other. No one wanted to tell them that. No one wanted to be the bearer of bad news. Say it doesn't work. And every time people tried to challenge them on their policies, they reacted on the same way. Instead of saying, maybe people have something to say, maybe their concerns are sort of valid. No. What they opted for was to dismiss everyone and to say...
They're in their own bubble, someone like Alistair Campbell or Roy Stewart in their own bubble, huffing their own farts too much, getting high on their own supply of farts.
He didn't... He literally said, we played this video before, he literally said that he was just an optimist and that he failed for the right reasons, though, because he doesn't want to be the bearer of bad news. That's exactly what I said before. But that's exactly how regimes become authoritarian. Because if you don't want to hear bad news, you don't want to hear criticism.
So not a serious analyst dealing with reality
No.
in any sort of objective
Not at
sense.
all. Not at all. No. Just wishful thinking.
And again, allegedly infected with an acute case of AIDS.
And they were paid.
Allegedly.
They were paid for wishful thinking. Every time people like him are paid to speak their mind about allegedly neutral data, they're pushing forward an agenda. And the reason why all of them were predicting a Harris victory was because they wanted to demoralize Republicans. And they wanted to combat the demoralization of the Democrats. So I think it's
a weird tactic though, isn't it? If you just zoom out for a moment, and just look at it from a 10,000 foot view,
it's a completely
historical view. It's
out of touch.
It's a weird angle to think that will really work in any real way.
Essentially, they based their whole campaign on a lie that Trump is necessarily against abortion. That was it. Where Trump said essentially he's going to outsource judgment to the states. So they were completely out of touch. Their message was unclear. The bits of it that weren't unclear were just wrong. Also, they were entirely out of touch. And everyone who dared to tell them that you are wrong, something's not right, they responded by saying you're a disgusting bigot. And my key takeaway here is that I think that the people who voted were correct in saying this, that having a candidate with policies that address a nation's decline is more important than having the first candidate with this or that irrelevant characteristic. When you say that it's an unprecedented crisis, you don't say that the solution is, well, let's choose someone with irrelevant characteristics and put tampons in boys' bathrooms. They went woke. They went broke.
There was a third pillar. Tampons in boys' bathrooms. She black, y'all. Kill your children. Abortion. That was it.
And not guarding the border.
Oh, that too. But that just comes in the general recipe for destroying civilization.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.